Oh, mommy, what's going on? All right, all right. Morning, folks. What's going on in the hood? Yeah, hey. All right, rock and roll. We got a lot of shit to do here. We got a lot of shit to do here. So let's get to work here. So first of all, it's 6 a.m. I'm over at my sister's house for the next few weeks. So if anybody is in, I think we're in like West Hollywood, something like that. If anybody's in Los Angeles, let me know. Very bored. Everybody's sleeping here because it's dark and you know, I'm waiting for a little roll around. Cool, 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 cool. I see it, Nick. You're good. All right. Well, let's get to fucking work. We got shit to do. All right. So first of all, let's take a look at the market indexes, and then we'll take a look at market breadth, and then we'll see where all the heat is, and we'll kind of come up with a game plan here. Yo, this is Thursday. Their market ain't closed. The market's closed tomorrow, so we'll have to make a quick work out of this, and maybe just like a hot mess into the afternoon. I don't know why these guys keep closing the markets on these random days, right? President's Day, this day. I don't even know what tomorrow is, but whatever it is, they should not be closing the markets for these kind of things. I mean, Good Friday. It seems like that's a nice day, right? Good Friday. But like, shouldn't that be like a holiday, right? Like, it's gonna be like a half day, like Thanksgiving. Like, why is Good Friday more important than the half day before Thanksgiving, right? Or after Thanksgiving? I don't know. They seem like they're all nice days, but give us a little half day. Let's have a little fun. The rest of us, I mean, what are we supposed to do all day? Nothing. Now let's take a look. So market is pulling back. We got about 0.5% gap down. We had a whole host of jobless claims and all this kind of bullshit. Jobs data in focus. Look, right now we're gapping down, but we're coming back right into like a decent, I wouldn't say like a big support zone, but we're in a decent support zone here, and we'll see kind of how it goes. But the big thing I want to kind of keep mind of is, even though we have the support here, the market breadth has been like really, it's been suspect I would say the last few days. And yesterday, like if you were running through your scans properly and going through more stocks than just right, like Apple and Tesla, you'd see that there was really like a whole host of 4% breakdowns like all over the place. And so I think that's something that we got to just put in the back of our heads. And you can see here the SPY's getting rejected, didn't even make it to resistance, right? And so this has already started to pull back. But let's take a look at market breadth here real quick, because that's been telling us a little bit of a story and something we'll have to kind of keep in the back of our heads. You can see yesterday we had almost 4% breakdowns. The day before 450, and then you can see, right, the number of breakouts has been really declining for the last few days. Minus this breadth thrust, we've been kind of pulling back, and so the leadership is thinning out. Now, of course, the leadership is going to thin out when you have a pullback in the market, but it does feel like even yesterday, it was just kind of a handful of companies that were leading the way, and then we'll kind of see what the fuck goes on after that. Now let's take a look. So the next thing we want to do after we take, a look at market breadth and our indexes, we want to make sure and see if we got any news plays. It's going to be slow a little bit on news plays because, Alcoa kicks off earnings season, but that's not for probably a couple more weeks. And so we've got a little bit of time before we get a speed up in the market. I think this is one of those kind of, these next 2 weeks are like where you get like 3-4 good trades a day, you shred them, and then like you're really just sitting around like, with the hand in the pocket for the rest of the day. So just be a little bit mindful. Like, we're probably going to get a handful of decent shreds, and then you got to kind of roll around here. Big thing though is, I don't even know, what do people do on the West Coast like after a trading day? Like the bars aren't even open. Like that's what I find a little bit messed up about this, right? What are you supposed to do at noon every day, or I guess even 10 o'clock whenever you're done and the market slows down? Having a little bit of trouble adjusting to that. Now let's take a look at our gappers here today. We'll see if we got anything juicy. So AMC's gapping up here. All sorts of box out the projection enforcement. I don't think that means anything. Here, GRR Gorilla Technology Group. Man, it's a damn nice name, isn't it? Like if you're gonna if you're gonna have a tech company, like it should be something like that, right? Like unless you should probably put something AI in it, but if not, like Gorilla Technology Group, that just does it. But this is what we call a sucker's bounce. Like you've got a little bit of a gap up here, but like once you have this, right, all these bounces are going to be suckers bounces. Like probably, there's a layer of, a layer of shorts that you could probably start to pile in as this thing kind of, the higher the better. But like that's a sucker's bounce. You do want to short those bad boys. Lunar. Yeah, Lunar is a pig too, right? GFAI, like this, you can see this, like you got a small gap up after this big pullback. Like this is probably due for like a little bit of a bounce today. But even that is like, I mean, that's a sucker's bounce too. Like even if this thing squeezes, let's say this thing squeezes back into this zone somewhere. I mean, once you have this, it's usually done. Like it'll be back down, $4 or probably even sub $4 in no time. Like that's, right, just like a little bit of a pump and a dump. And as pump and dumps go, right, like it's always good to be first. It's good to be second, but you don't want to be last. You never want to be the last man to the gangbang. But first or second, that could be a fun time, right? That could be a fun time. So always got to be mindful. You don't want to be stuck in those things, though. You don't invest in those things anyways. All right, Vodafone junk. So you can see here, like not much action going on in the pre-market. That's to be expected, as you're coming in like a little bit pre-earnings, but we'll see what's going on. Hey, Wedbush downgrade, Supermicro to underperform. Fucking Wedbush, right? Hey, semiconductors and some of these kind of tech stocks have been super weak. This thing trades too thin for me. I'd actually probably take a gander at this. Like this looks like it probably has got to bleed off into the 50-day moving average, but it just trades a little bit thin. Like you just never get the heat on those kind of things. That you can't get the size that you want. Like if you got to trade like 100 shares of that, like what good is it? IFRX has had a big push the last day and a half. You can see you got like a week open on this. This is probably a little bit of a candidate for, a red to green, but right, the big hairy Indian butt of something like this is like, right, it's due to come back into the buck anyway. So you might get like 3, 4, 5 minutes of glory, but that 3, 4, 5 minutes of glory is not gonna, that ain't gonna last that long. Hey, Armando, I got you. We'll take a look at that bad boy too. And it doesn't look like we got much on, right, the news plays here. We forgot about this yesterday. I stocked this damn stock for days, and then we got so caught up in Tesla and some of this other stuff yesterday, we missed it. This has probably got a lot more to pull back, like you got, from 4 to 10. I'd be probably shorting this thing on pops, as this thing rolls over. I wouldn't be surprised to see another day. You don't want to chase a 4% gap down on this. But if this thing starts to squeeze up, like say you get back into like this 850, 860 range, like I'd look to see if this thing gets jammed up and then try to fade it back off. Like this is a prime time. It's like a prime time candidate. If the market keeps rolling like this, you want to see some of these like tech stocks that really had like a big ramp. Like this did have earnings out, but this ramp was like, this came out of nowhere a little bit here. Granted, it used to be $80, but on a short-term basis, like this is definitely a top up. I'd keep some alerts around here. If this thing gets into like 850, 860, I think we can have a little bit of a top off on this. I'd add this, to the watch list here. We'll rejigger through these things in a hot second here. You can see here, right? This is the leverage ETFs for FANG. So like all of this stuff is looking pretty nasty here. So let's go into the regular watch list. There's not much in terms of earnings over here. Yeah, you see this, you got to fade off on this bad boy already. And you already see this on QQ. Hold on, let me fluff my coffee. Yeah, I'm trading on laptop life for a couple more. I'm trading on laptop life. It's not so bad. I got a couple of those, what do you call them? USB monitors or whatever. They do the job. All right, let's take a look and see what's going on first. Let's take a look at these banks because they were nasty they were real nasty a couple days ago. Then I would consider this an inside day. So guys, what an inside day is after you have a big range day, you're going to have a narrow day, a narrow range day preceding it as you start to digest that previous day's like a really big ramp. And so you can see here, like even though it did break a little bit below yesterday's range, I'll consider this, in a makeshift, consider this a makeshift inside day here, even though we broke under for like 2 or 3 candles or whatever. So inside day on CRE, right? Inside day on DPST, you can see like we were all over the place here. We did have like a hot second of glory. I think Walt put out an 8K and well, it looked, man, this thing was really like it was about to dump this pig was about to dump off. And then they put something out here and it did end up squeezing off. So I don't know if this thing actually holds. We'll have to see like how it kind of reacts around the range. Let's say the box is between like 28 and 31. I'd stay away from the middle of the box and start to see like which way it marinates. Like obviously the trend is down, but usually what happens is like when the trend gets like so steep like this, you end up just grinding everybody sideways for like months and months and months. Like I've seen this like so many times here where it's like you see like these big flushes and you're like, okay, bear flag, bear flag, bear flag. the damn bear flags. So bear flag itself can only last for so long before it actually turns into a rounding pattern. And so we want to make sure we just kind of stay away from that. And that's not necessarily the case yet, but so far, right, a lot of the heat has been gone, but we did have a nice kind of 4 or 5 days of dump here. So keep an eye on these. We're in a little bit of a box here, right? PAC W is like similar. The range is just, this did actually break below yesterday's lows and had a little bit more heat. So this has got, if you look here on an hourly, like this has got a setup that's still emerging, but it does need to crack here. You got maybe another week or so, right? Because you can see here the 9 EMA is like really tightening up here. It's going to have to make a decision in the next week or so on whether, right, this thing actually wants to go down or just turns into a rounding. And we've seen this a million times, right? Like something just gets nailed and then the bear flag turns into rounding. And some of that will be just dependent on market condition. But I do think yesterday we did have a little bit of an inside day and it's the last day of the week. So we'll see like if this CRE kind of rolls red and takes out 4150, give or take, we might get a little bit of a shot on this. Now let's take a look at some of the tech stocks that I got on the watch list. I want to add these. First of all, Roku finally had a breakdown under the 50-day moving average. It had been stuck in this nasty little range here for a good month and some change. And you can see here, like it kept testing this 50-day moving average and tested and tested and tested and tested it. And finally, you never got to close under, right? So like you can test something, but you need to close under it, right? So finally it closed under the 50-day moving average. And now you can start to see like this has got, right now we under this, I would say, let's give it, and right, these are like, I mean, we're all professional line drawers, right? Like it doesn't really fucking mean anything. You see a chart long enough, you can draw a bunch of lines like a big dick doctor, but let's just call it 60. some change to really get this thing sped up. But I think the first zone of love will be, even in this 60-50, give or take. So you get a flat open, give or flat open, or down a few pennies on this 20 cents. Let's see how this thing reacts around here. One thing with Roku is like, even though it does 10 million shares a day in volume, it trades super thin at the open, right? So the spread on this, it could be like 20, 30, 40 cents at the open. So you'll have to be careful. Like if this thing wants to dump down, first of all, it'll do it real fast. You'll get an MPC straight down, but you kind of have to layer into it. Like it doesn't just rip down and then do it for fun, right? Like it always has a little bit more drama due to the fact that there's always a lack of liquidity, like on this thing right at the open. So just something to be mindful of. But this thing is ready to get shredded down. Coin, look, so coin, after they got hit by, I think the Wells notice in the SEC, it really, it ended up bouncing a little bit, and then it kind of meandered around into this box. And you can see here, you're finally losing this 200-day moving average, and you finally lost this kind of 61 spot. So when it looks like this, right, when it looks like, right, you're sticking a middle finger up of it, you got this, right, just whoop. I mean, in old times, they'd call this the head and shoulders. But anytime you see that, where you just see that big middle finger up the middle, that's usually a rollover pattern. Let's see if this thing starts to break under, let's see if this thing breaks under this 60 spot, give or take, and it holds under there, right? And it starts to build. You might get a speed up on this. My only worry on this one is this would be day 4 of the move. In general, in this particular market, unless you get a big speed up in the indexes, it may end up needing an inside day to just congeal before it actually breaks down. So we do have to kind of take that. We got to take that into account. Let me see what some of you guys are looking at. I do have Fastly. I thought Fastly is an interesting one because, it had this huge run up from 7 to, 18. And yesterday was its first kind of big day, right? First big day, first kind of crack in the system on this thing. I think you got room down into kind of the 14 spot on this. You can see you've been grinding up from 12 to 18. It's 20, 30%. And it actually moved pretty clean. The big hairy, right, Indian butt of this is going to be liquidity. It does fine. You got 5-6 million shares on this bad boy. But the one thing with Fastly is it doesn't ever have liquidity at the open in the first 5, 10, 15 minutes. So you do got to watch your size. I did this whenever this earnings pop was happening over here. I caught myself with 10 or 12,000 of these things. The fucking thing, it just thinned out so much, you're just shitting your pants a little bit. But if it's cold enough outside, it might feel nice. And it ended up kind of working out, but I ended up having to layer out of it because I got spooked on the size on the bad boy. Good. So add this one. This is priorities, right? Let's say I got one more that I really, really like. And then, the rest of them look okay. Twilly Ho, right? Twilly Ho. This has not participated in the rally at all of recent, right? So if you look at the Qs, and right, this nice rally that we've had here since, March, in the beginning of March, Twilly Ho has not participated. Well, if anything, right, you've got lower highs, lower highs, lower highs, and you're starting to crack into some supports here. This is probably a primetime candidate. If the market decides to get its D shredded on Easter Thursday, the Good Friday Eve, I believe they would call it in proper Old Testament vernaculars. Good Friday Eve, if you want to have a Good Friday Eve dump, this one's probably a primetime candidate. Let's put an alert at like 58.75 to start watching for patterns. So when you have levels, like you don't just take it if you break over a level or under a level, like, right? This is not like a 1980s trading textbook. You still got to wait for, right, some type of tightness of range, some type of pattern. You still need to mix in other things, right? Like, as Levi would say, like he uses supply and demand, and then, right, some common sense in terms of consolidations and VWAPs and things of that nature. So you still have to do a combination of things. We've got a little bit of a breakdown here at that 61 zone, right? The next spot will be 68.75, but we still need to get a little bit more juice into this bad boy. ZS, you can see. So this is what I mean by like the indexes, right? We're really masking a lot of like this kind of nastiness. The indexes are masking, I think, probably a lot of it, right? It's just like Apple and Microsoft have been so orderly. But right, a lot of these other ones, right? You see this bad boy, right? It's starting to break down too. And that's like some pretty good range here. You got a 10 spot on ATR, right? Average true range. If you get a 10 spot on ATR, like that's some nasty stuff that's going on here. So just kind of something to be mindful of. I think this one might be a little bit extended, and definitely needs a couple inside days. So this is more of a watch for Monday than it would be for today. We can see here, right? We got some failed breakouts over here. Like Onan got a downgrade. Man, that thing was looking beauty, right? Like you got a downgrade on this bad boy. So you're rolling over all over the place. Now let's take a look though. Like, okay, everything is rolling over, but right. Anytime you go through a bunch of scans and everything looks like a short, it's usually when you end up right with either a choppy day or like a small bounce, and then everybody's caught the other way. So what are some names that we can actually look to bounce, because it never always works out the way you want. So let's first take a look. I think if you guys remember, like a couple weeks ago, this 180 zone was like a rock on Tesla. It was more of a zone of love, like not an actual right spot, but there was a zone of love here between 186 and I would say 180. Like 180 was right. It's not going to be an exact spot, but 180, it goes back a little bit of ways, where we used it as an inflection point back in February. And then, we were kind of hugging around it. And then in the beginning of March, we were really dancing around it. This is an hourly chart. You can see, like, I remember this particular day in this first week of March. Like every time it hit 180, we just rip it for like 3-4 points, 3-4 points, 3-4 points. And it did that like fucking every couple hours. There was always a spot. I think we're coming into like some nice zones here. This was 208. If we start getting into the 180s and maybe even 176 would be a little bit more stretch, that would be really nice. You got to 8 stochastics on this thing. Now it's not like a parabolic long or anything. It's not like a high level long, but this 180 usually is just a little bit of juice on this bad boy. Little bit of juice on this bad boy. Good. Yeah, so we can, also use the indexes and all this kind of, fun little shenanigans on it. Boom, 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 boom. Yeah, I saw UPST. I don't like this one because it just stuck right at the 50-day moving average. It is kind of, right? It's just a range, right? When you get something that's in like this big of a range, like you usually don't have like that kind of juice on it. So like, are you really going to jam this thing up like while the market's rolling at the 50-day moving average? Probably not. Like even some of these things, like they need a little bit more work. Like you could see here, Mara, right? Like they just need a little bit more. They're still bullish charts. Like these are big trends. But like after you go from 3 to 10, like dipping down like a buck, that's not juicing up enough reward to be like, oh shit, I got to get into this bad boy, right? Meta's coming into a little bit of support here. You can see here, this is hourly chart. So you got a little bit of support here, but if it loses this, so that's like something you trade around. It's not a high level, it's not a high level setup. But on a momentary basis, if the market bounces, right, you've got, 6-7 points of upside. And, if you lose that, then you have, right, quite a significant more, you got like 6-7 points of downside. So you are at an inflection point. So I do have this on my watch list just because I do like trading around these kind of points. It is not a steep enough buy to like swing trade it or anything like that. This is like, at this point, more of a day trading instrument, but you can dance around this level. So I do got this on the watch list also. Yeah, and then, we'll be running some scans throughout the day. We'll see what's going on. Hey, NVIDIA was trading like shite, right? NVIDIA was trading like crap for a good chunk of the day. So just kind of keep that also in mind here. Let's watch this 180 Tesla. You can see here, this will be important. Like if we start to build under yesterday's lows, then, then it's lows for the bros. Yeah, and then, well, I'll keep an eye on these banks. What? Use Creed, and then if this thing starts to shred, then come in with the DP and the Pac Nation and the wall bolster the wall and the rest of these things. I think we stay with the big boys. Stay with the big boys for today. You got day 2 on FSLY, day 2, right? Roku. Day 2, Roku. And we got Coin. We got Twilly Ho. And then look, this AI, I think, right? We might be able to shred this thing for a quick momentary bounce around this 20 spot. You still want to make sure you want to make sure that you start to build a little bit there. Like if it hits into it, it's holding, you could take a teaser. Then if it starts to build, you can kind of bounce it up a little bit. The trend on this is done. Like it's not going back to 35E regardless, when you have this kind of thing. But the big hairy Indian butt is we might get a couple points out of this thing. We might get a couple points out of this thing a little bit later. All right. I'm at my sister's place, Samka. Yeah, I'm at my sister's place. We're having fun. We just having like movie day. What brother, sister do. Me and my sister, we're cool. Like when I come here, she don't take me nowhere. We go to the bar, we drink wine and play on our phones and do not speak to each other. It's amazing. She's like, what do you want to do today? I don't know, man. You want to go get drunk and play on our phones and not talk to each other? She's like, yeah, let's do that. Right? That's a good sister. Oh, MPC just means a mega penis candle, Dave. Sorry. Oh, you know what? I do like Baba. Who said that? I do like Baba. If we need a long, I do potentially like Baba, I should say. This will be really market dependent. If the market gets shredded, then this has got nothing on it, right? But if it loses this 97, but if the market can hold, then we're gonna get some fun on this bad boy. Oh, let's go do what we do, folks, which is the do. Let's have some fun today.